I had perpetually been the entrepreneur that couldn't even take 7 days off. Like I had gone on, my 7-day holiday or 2-week holiday and continued to check email, continued to take calls occasionally, and I never shut down. From that experience, I learned truly how to shut down. And I'll be completely honest with you, after coming back from Europe and shutting off, I had struggled to get back into it.
I
it
mean,
it actually
yeah.
gave me the sense of relief and the sense of calm that I hadn't had in so long. Um, and it did, affect my ambition a little bit for a short period of time because I had seen the other side and I had seen how relaxed that experience had made me. But in the end, it made me stronger. Um, it made me more balanced, and it allowed me to actually check myself when I got to close to burnout again, to realize that, okay, I'm not going to go there.
Well, let's just take a moment, close our eyes, take a deep breath. Just arrive into the space, dropping our shoulders, feeling relaxed, just leaving everything at the door. Bringing in all the good intentions and showing up in our highest good. Okay, let's start.
Okay, let's do it.
It's always good to just take a breath and take
I
a
like
moment.
that. I've not done that before a podcast, and I like it.
I think it's a great way to set the intention. And I
Yeah.
feel like everyone has their own style. But for me, I think it's important to just ground ourselves, right? And it's not about the perfect answer. It's just about being grounded and truthful, right? So thank you so much, Heather, for being here. I know you're a busy entrepreneur and a leader who's doing so many amazing things. So thank you for being here.
It was a pleasure, and I love that we're in person together. It's amazing that we can line it up.
Yeah, and hopefully spending some more time together
Yes,
soon.
definitely. I'd love to.
Well, Heather, I think in the industry, you're known as an entrepreneur, a brand builder, an event producer, probably more famously for W North, building this wonderful community for women executives and entrepreneurs, and not just within Canada. I mean, this is a global platform. What was that aha moment where you're like, I need to start something like this?
So it was back in 2014, actually. I was working for a Fortune 500 company. I was a go-getter and I was in mid-management. And I was looking to sort of move up into that senior leadership position. And I was also a remote employee, which actually back in 2014 was maybe a little bit more rare.
Yeah.
And
That's trend setting, actually.
It is trend setting. And, at that time, a lot of corporate leadership training, at least at my organization, I was told it was all happening at the head office, which in my case was Toronto. And I said, okay, great. Well, I'd love to come out for some of that leadership training. And they were like, oh, yeah, no, it's a lot. Some of that stuff is reserved for executive level. And I sort of had this, thought, okay, well, here I am, high potential, really want to move up in the organization. But a lot of the leadership training, coaching resources were reserved for women that were already at the top. And so it really got me to thinking about what does it look like for, we have all of these conversations about moving more women into positions of leadership. What does it look like in that pipeline? And it was that experience for me personally that pushed me as an event producer to launch the first W North conference in 2015, which I did. So I was looking around at some leadership development not courses, but also conferences where I could build high-level connections. And many of them were in the US, and they were also really expensive to attend and not
Yes.
necessarily in my budget.
Mhm.
And this was I like to call it like the TED conference era. TED had just landed in Vancouver. There were global speakers coming from all over the world. And I took a lot of inspiration from that. And I said, well, what if we could build, a conference really dedicated to elevating women in the leadership pipeline to help solve this problem of lack of women at the top? And so that was the foundations for W North Conference, which I launched in 2015.
That's wonderful. Well, I think we just passed your 10th anniversary, so congratulations.
Thank you.
To have that span and to have that, lifespan, it takes a lot of grit, a lot of hard work, but also it shows that, one, it's needed, two, that, women are finding it valuable, and you're giving a lot of knowledge back into the ecosystem by creating this network. And you made a really good point about affordability.
Yeah.
As a woman who's maybe looking to be in that manager or executive role, we can't always afford to go to so many events, our resources are put into other things, or we have children, and it's not as accessible. And I've actually experienced that myself, looking at events
Yeah.
and, okay, I want to travel here, I want to attend this, and you look at the price, and it can be very stressful, thinking that, wow, I have to spend all this money. Um, Not to say that you shouldn't spend money, because I do believe you should invest in yourself.
Yeah.
But there's a balance, right? Of like, how much at what point of your career can you actually invest into that? And you mentioned something interesting about pipeline.
Yeah.
And I was actually, leading up to our interview, I was looking up some stats actually, that the pipeline of women for managerial or senior management roles has actually decreased since 2022.
Yes.
So it's gone from about 54.5% to about 45.3%. That point three is really important.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's just astonishing,
Yeah.
right? And, there's a recent report by McKinsey saying that if we were to close the gender pay gap, especially in Canada, it would attribute to 150 billion towards our GDP by 2026.
Yep.
That's amazing.
It is
Right?
amazing.
But how are we going to get there?
Well, I think that, going back to your point about longevity, we're in year 11 right now. And I think what keeps me going is women in the community that continue to say, I need this support. I need this membership network. I need these events. I need this community. And, when I read those same stats about how the numbers were dropping in the pipeline, I was not surprised, because I live and breathe it every day, and I sit on calls and with our members about coming back out of COVID and the coming back to the office and the mandate to be in the office a certain amount of days a week. All of these things are putting an enormous amount of pressure, especially on mid-management female professionals who have many things going on in their world that's not just work. They have the external pulls of care, which can look like child care, but it can also look like elderly care and multiple other different
Exactly.
pulls. And so those factors are all contributing to that drop. And, we are seeing some challenges with pulling back on programs that do support women in this day and age. And so I think that, that has even put more fuel to the fire for me in terms of support. And to your point about affordability as well, it was really important for me when I built W North, both as a membership and as conference, that it was at a price point that was accessible to women who may get support corporately, but may not. And, we strive to provide people the resources so they can go and advocate for themselves to have their membership or their conference ticket covered by their organization. But the reality is it doesn't always happen. And so bringing things like peer mentorship programs in sort of a form of coaching to them as an accessible option. Like executive coaching is really expensive.
It is.
And, I know a lot of people who offer it. I know a lot of people who are participating in it, and not everyone has the resources to be able to make it happen. But we've doubled down on a peer mentorship and executive coach led facilitation
That's
to
great.
be able to bridge that gap. So there's a little bit of there's access to it without it breaking the bank for them.
I love that. And I'm sure it's doing so well. For myself, I feel like the times I've asked questions, even if I see an inspiring woman, I'll ask her something if I can get a minute of her time. And
Yeah,
even just that, those few words can make such an empowering difference to know that she's done it, she's been there. This is the guidance that she's giving me. And I feel like that's the whole ethos of this podcast is
yeah,
let's share the information. Let's bring each other up. Quite frankly, I have been in rooms where I'm facing, first of all, men that might be challenging to deal with, but I've also had female leaders
mm,
be very difficult, uninspiring because they don't want to help. There's some sort of internal competition. I don't know what that is. I
yeah,
feel like in this sense, it's not there. But I've seen a lot of different managers, directors that I've dealt with. This is even going back to when I was in high school. I remember my first or second job, and my manager was not very nice to me. And I wonder why that was, right? And then I was in another job in my mid 20s. It's a long story. I ended up taking her job. And I look at why was that? It's because I was kind, right? I had integrity. I was responsible. I was uplifting the people around me, but also having, our business and our goals in line as well. So I feel like it's so special to have a community like that. I could just tell you firsthand, right? That
yeah,
it's so encouraging and it's hard to not receive feedback from other women. I feel like it's just it makes you emotional because it's like we're all going through the same things,
yeah.
and maybe there's a reason why they feel that way. Have you ever been in a situation like that?
Well, I think that what you're sharing, it's just reaffirms to me why it's really important to find community outside
Mm,
of your organization sometimes.
yes.
Because then there is not that competitiveness. And what I love about W North's, we are non-industry. So we're industry agnostic. So we
Yeah.
have women in finance all the way to women in mining and energy and entrepreneurs. And so I think to your point about sort of not having that competition, there are some really great internal programs at many of these organizations that are led by the HR departments or the employee resource groups. But there is something really special about coming out of your organization and
Mhm.
connecting with like-minded women
Yeah.
that may not be in your industry and but they're at the same level of leadership, which is what I think is really important. And there's less, as higher you get up the corporate ladder, the less women there are to talk to. And that
Exactly.
often happens. I've talked to a lot of our members and they say, I joined because one example is a woman who works for a manufacturing company, 50 employees. She is the only woman and she's a director. And so she has
I
no
believe
one.
that.
She has no one to talk to. And so I think that's to your point about the internal politics that can happen within leadership development, within an organization. Sometimes it's really great to just remove yourself and work on yourself outside and separately from the organization.
That's really good advice.
Hmm.
Really good advice. Throughout your career, you've been part of different organizations. Obviously, now you're running your own organization. You've had a chance to work with change makers globally, right? You have Virgin Unite, different organizations that are related to the UN. What have those experiences taught you about, like, what does real leadership look like today? I know you were at
Yeah.
the United General Assembly a few weeks ago. I was there too,
I saw
and I
that.
wish we had
I saw that on
connected.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, I wish we had connected. It would have been nice, hopefully next year. But on the ground, are there any observations you can share with us?
For sure. So, what I've slowly noticed, and one of the reasons why I've got a little bit more involved in the social impact space is over the last few years, amongst our community is this hunger to to have social impact as a bigger part of their corporate journey. And so we have over the years been starting to bring in more of those conversations. This year in Whistler at our annual conference, we had Jean Allwang, who's the founding president of Virgin Unite, as our opening keynote, talking about some of the initiatives that she's working on. And so I've just started, and that's why we started our W North New York Summit, which is now during the UN General Assembly. And we will be doing it again next year as well, September 17th. So we'll have to talk about that. And one of the things that I find really impactful about aligning ourselves with Virgin Unite and the Gates Foundation and some of these organizations is that there are so many women who are embedded in corporate leadership. And they may have the outlets or they may not have the outlets to have a give back component. And so what I'm trying to do with some of these programs and some of these partnerships is give women an opportunity to make an impact. Sometimes, we're not really in an economy right now where you can quit your day job. And a lot of the times over the years that I've seen these sort of waves of people quitting their day job, starting as an entrepreneur. It's around wanting to give back and to have a social legacy. And so I wanted to reinvent what does it look like to create that social legacy while you remain in your well-paying, well-established, corporate role. And that may be bringing some social impact initiatives into your organization, or it may just mean being a part of some initiatives outside of your organization. And so that's what I'm seeing is kind of this pattern of women not being necessarily in a position to move, but really desiring to make an impact in their day-to-day.
Yeah, I love that. They can still have their day-to-day, their career, if you will, but still add to it in some way, right? With the
Yeah.
right organizations or initiatives. And
Angel investing is a perfect example.
yes,
Actually, angel investing was one of our topics in New York this year. And I think what was amazing about this topic is I think a lot of the attendees seem to think that you had to have $500,000 to be an angel investor. And in fact, you can invest for a couple $1,000s
yes,
through a number of different platforms. And so that's a perfect example of how, if we're going to make change on the equity front, and we're going to keep some of these incredible women-owned businesses alive and thriving through the economic turmoil that may be ahead, then we as women need to invest in these organizations. And so that was just one example. And it's not always about philanthropy. That's the other thing is I want people to know it's not always, when I talk about social impact, it's not always about giving to charity. Sometimes it's about supporting and investing in another female entrepreneur and becoming an advisor
yes.
or becoming an investor. And you don't necessarily have to start your own business.
I
You
love
can,
that.
be a part of an entrepreneurial journey through different avenues as well.
I think that's really special to say that because I think sometimes we think we're always lacking something that we need to do more. We need to start a business. I need to be a founder,
Hmm.
right? There's so much inundation from social media, which is great. It's very inspiring. It can also be a little bit challenging too, because maybe you think, oh, I'm not in the right space. I'm not at the right stage in my life. She's doing that. I must do the same thing,
Yeah.
right? But you can also go out and support these women that are already doing it, right?
Yes.
Which I would hope that would triple their effect.
Yeah.
Help their business, make more jobs, more opportunities, get them to a global stage. And yeah, I've actually noticed a lot of friends of mine who are investing in businesses. And actually, I was talking to a friend of mine. She was on season 1 of Beyond,
Oh, yeah.
Delora, and
Yeah.
she's an advisor,
Yeah.
investor as well. She used to be in the fashion business. Now she's sort of in like cyber and ethical AI. And one of the advice she gave me, because we were toying around with the business idea, she's like, go to your friends and family first.
Yeah.
Go to the people that support you. go to the women in your life. If they
Yes.
believe in you, they believe in the purpose, they'll probably be your first investors. And I think that's encouraging to say that to women so they feel like they can actually start,
Exactly.
right? Because going out there fundraising, there's a lot of pressure there, and we know the stats,
Mm-hmm.
right?
2% of venture capital.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you for sharing that. Really
Mm-hmm.
important. Do you think conversations about women's leadership sometimes focus too much on resilience and empathy and risk overlooking, authority and ambition? Because I feel like those are two different sort of energies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of really positive things to be said about women's leadership in this sort of the soft power strategies. But I also think, I don't want the conversation to go too far that we don't have the drive,
Mm-hmm.
or we
Yeah.
don't have the leadership skills or the ability to have tough
Yeah.
conversations. Because in fact, I believe that women are the best negotiators. They just have different
Different
strategies.
strategies.
Yes. So I think one of the things that I often like to say about the way that we deliver content at W North is not that we're not a gender equity conference or we're not a gender equity organization. We are a leadership development
Mm-hmm.
organization with a gendered lens. So, even just speaking to, we have a keynote speaker for London, our event in a couple weeks. And she normally speaks to audiences of men and women. And she was a little bit unsure about how to, address the room. And I said, don't change the way that you're going to
Mm-hmm.
address the room in
Interesting.
any way, shape, or form. Um, because this is a leadership conversation that
Yeah.
you're leading HR at one of the largest organizations in the world, and these are women who want to learn from you. Do not shift how you would talk to the men in the room. And so I think that was a really aha moment for
Wow.
her, because I think she felt like I have to change the way that I speak and the way that I would deliver. And I said, no, it's simply that we are delivering content, and it just so happens that majority of women
Audience
or
is
audience
women.
is women. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. And this is an executive senior
Very
person
senior, C-suite.
asking this question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that as an organization that is very active in the social impact space, but maybe not doing as much that's directly women's only. And I think that she was equally impressed and surprised by my answer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's very interesting. How would you describe your personal leadership style? I'm curious.
I I would say that I am a visionary, so I have these really big ideas, um, which are sometimes very lofty, sometimes impossible, but not impossible because eventually I find a way. From a team perspective, we have a remote team, but we all live within 30 minutes drive of each other.
That's nice.
So I think that, we try as best we can to kind of connect in person, um, because we're really collaborative. And a lot of the ideas, I like to bounce these wild ideas off, and then I get brought down to the real world by my team in terms of what's realistic. Um, I think I also, when I'm hiring for new positions, I will hire based on company fit and almost like backwards engineer their role. And because we're such a small business, I can do this. I'll find a good candidate and I will ask them what fires them up. And we are all multi-skilled and multi-talented in areas from marketing to sales to content. And we've even shuffled job responsibilities around the team based on a new hire's
Skill set.
abilities and skill set. And also rechecking in with the team as to what are they doing right now? What do they like? And what do they want to get rid of? And is this not serving us anymore? So I'll ditch an idea even if the team doesn't want to work on it. So I think that's one of the benefits of working with a fairly small team is you can be a lot more nimble and you can decide, hey, so we were working on this event program and it's working, but it's not really working and nobody really like wants
Yeah.
to, pursue it. So let's scrap it. And that's one of the things I love about working in a small business.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more flexibility to either, edit or, adapt, right? But also to even go really far with your ideas too, right? It's sort
Yeah.
of like both ends.
Yes.
Um, that's one thing I love about working with small organizations too, is like
Hmm.
having that personal touch, not having to go through a million steps to get one thing done, and to make more impact, hopefully much quicker. Um, I'd love to switch the conversation a little bit about motherhood and balance and identity, if you're open to it.
Yes.
So you've built this amazing global platform. We all know that, and I think it's very I respect you a lot for that, especially because you're balancing motherhood and you're balancing being an entrepreneur. So how do you do that? And I would assume you burn out because I don't think anyone's life is perfect. So
Yeah.
how do you I don't even wanna use the word balance because I just feel
Yeah.
like it's not a good
The
word.
the
How do
word
you go from
flow.
flows?
Yeah, it's a
Yes,
lot of people using the word flow right
I love
now.
that.
Yeah.
So how do you flow
How do
between
you
the 2?
flow? Well, so I am at this life stage right now where I like to call it I'm coming out of the fog, or I've come out of the fog. My kids are 6 and 9. At the height of the pandemic, they were 1 and 4.
Wow.
And I would say that from a motherhood perspective, right now feels easy. That time did not feel easy. I ran an events based business during the pandemic with 2 small children. So now I feel like a superhero because I feel like I can do anything after that. When it comes to balance, I have to acknowledge that I have a very handy husband, a very helpful,
That's nice.
involved husband who works part time in order to make it all work. And I think that's really important to acknowledge. Um, I travel a lot, as you do as well, and with kids in school, it's not always easy when there's like 17 early dismissals, then the
Of
school
course.
ends at 11:45 and somehow they're not all marked on the calendar and you're like
They just pop
they
up.
just pop up and you're like, "Wait, the school ends at 11:45 again today?" So, I think there's the partnership that you have with your spouse or partner. Um there's also it's hard. It's not my kids don't love that fact that I travel. But what I'm learning at this life stage is now they're interested in learning about more about what I do. And so I try to involve them a little bit more when I'm working on like a slideshow presentation, which my son was having to do for school recently. I involved him. And so it helps to sort of negate some of the mom guilt when you start to involve them and educate them a little bit more on
Yes.
like where you're going, why you're going, and why it's important. I did burn out in 2023. I, had to take on to basically um, build the business back up to where it was pre pandemic. I had to take on more than I could chew. And it was, and I had a moment where I just had to I took a month and a half off during the summer, and then luckily we also had a epic bucket list trip planned to Europe for a month. So I was off for a couple of
I saw
months.
that on your Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was off for a couple of months, and I had a really strong team. They kept things going, and I had perpetually been the entrepreneur that couldn't even take 7 days off. Like, I had gone on, my 7-day holiday or 2-week holiday and continued to check email, continued to take calls occasionally, and I never shut down. From that experience, I learned truly how to shut down. And I'll be completely honest with you, after coming back from Europe and shutting off, I had struggled to get back into it.
I
It
mean,
it actually
yeah.
gave me the sense of relief and the sense of calm that I hadn't had in so long. Um, And it did, affect my ambition a little bit for a short period of time because I had seen the other side and I had seen how relaxed that experience had made me. But in the end, it made me stronger. Um, it made me more balanced, and it allowed me to actually check myself when I got to close to burnout again, to realize that, okay, I'm not going to go there.
So do you think it allowed you to be more in tune with yourself, to be able to make those check-ins, or was it intuition? For example, now, let's just say present day, what would you do differently now?
So I would say presently, I so another thing that happened in the last 18 months is I prioritized fitness, which I can confidently say I've never prioritized fitness. Like it has not been in my top 5 for my entire life. And I made a bit of a shift there. And so what I found now is that I I was always giving myself the excuse that I don't have time for that. Well, now I will do it. I will work out or I will do whatever, even if it means pushing a deadline or pushing something off or saying no, which is kind of new thing for me. And then what I actually found out was by taking care of myself, I became way more productive. Um, and I actually didn't need to slow down the workload that I had. I actually was able to achieve more. So it's kind of a backwards way of getting there, but it allowed me to be more excited about the work I was doing as well, which allowed me to finish things faster.
Well, it seems like you're taking care of yourself,
Yes.
right? You're giving yourself care and nurture that we can't necessarily get from work.
No.
Those are different types of achievements and feelings, but to feel healthy, to get a good sweat in, eat the proper food, and of course, I'm sure every day is different. You don't always get to what you want to get to, but there's something about taking care of yourself that actually brings in more flow,
Yeah,
like you said before,
for
right?
sure.
And I think that's so important to understand what that is. And my flow or what I need might look different from you and vice versa. One thing about this show I really want to sort of come across is like transitioning.
Mm,
Whether you're a moment in your life. It might be post separation or divorce. It might be after having small children, or maybe it's changing your career. What advice would you give to someone who's ready to make like a transition or a change? It doesn't have to be about business, just in general. Like they're ready, they're kind of teetering,
yeah.
but they're not ready to take the step yet. What would you say?
I think that what we don't always realize is preparing yourself for change is really important. So, I mean, the best example would be, let's say you were in a job and you're considering um, you want to change jobs or you want to quit or it's a transition from one job to another potentially. I think that it's really important for people to give themselves some space and some time, and maybe they think that that timeline is 3 months, but it might actually be 9 months. And so I think it's a matter of, almost getting organized
Mhm.
for those transitions, um, being prepared, um, to have the conversations with people whose organization they wanna work for, and just giving yourself a little bit of permission to, test the waters before you kinda jump right in, um, because transitions are hard. They're really hard. And also, if you're in a position where you can actually make a decision on transition, consider the other transitions that are going on in your life and try and, time that. Because when you've got multiple transitions happening at the same time, it's 100% doable. People do it all the time. But if you do have control to sort of stagger some of those, I would
Stagger.
highly recommend it. Yeah.
That's great advice. And if we were to be a little bit more tactical about it,
Hmm.
so I'll just say, let's say Susie,
Yeah.
in Vancouver, she's maybe trying to get back into the workforce. Is there anything like really tactical you would say? Like is it in like messaging people? Is it just putting it yourself out there? is it okay to verbally tell someone, "Hey, this is the situation I'm in, and this is what
Yes.
I'm looking for"?
100%, especially in this current environment. I would even encourage people to do a post on their LinkedIn that
That's good
tells
advice.
people, I think, in this age where there's so many open to work badges on people's LinkedIn, the people who I've seen who are in these transitions, who I've either been laid off or they've coming back from a parental break or par- parental. Are we even calling it a break? Because it's not a break. Parental leave potentially. Um,
Short-term leave.
yeah. So the people who have actually put it out to the universe via a LinkedIn post, or like Instagram stories, maybe depending what your platform is. I think they've seen some really interesting opportunities come their way. And it's really vulnerable to put yourself out there like that. But I think that's the only way people are going to really know how they can support you and how they can help you.
I love that. I mean, there's you almost have to be honest with yourself so you can be honest with other people, right?
Exactly.
And knowing where you're at, and it's okay to share that. Give yourself permission, right? To
Yeah.
be open in searching for that next opportunity, or even friendship, connection, right? I know we don't have too much longer with you, so I don't want to. I wish I could ask you questions all day because this is really great advice. Thank you so much. What are you most looking forward to in the next 2 years?
That's a great question. And 2 years is such a long
Feels like a long
time.
time, yeah, but
Um,
it's gonna go
It
by quick.
it will go by so quickly. Well, as you mentioned, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and so I kind of am looking at this as the next decade of W North, and we have already started to see some incredible opportunities come our way, including an event with Virgin Unite that you mentioned we're doing in London in just over a month. We're also doing our 11th annual conference in May in Whistler at the Four Seasons. In general, I just think, you know, two things. One is our membership is growing and it's getting to be more globally minded and social impact minded, which I'm so excited about. And then the second thing is I'm really seeing women they're they're coming into this. You talked about ambition, and there was a report recently that I read that was basically debunking this myth that women aren't ambitious, and I'm seeing it across our community that women are really ambitious and they have big goals for themselves. And in fact, one of the biggest things right now that is covering off a lot of our content and will be a theme at our conference is there's a huge wealth transfer that's happening right now. $3 trillion in the next 10 to 15 years will be given, and 70% will be transferred, sorry, and then 70% of it's going into the hands of women. And so we have this enormous opportunity as women to step into not only powerful positions in leadership, but step into a power from a wealth perspective
Mhm.
and how wealth is managed,
Yes,
and how things like the stock market are controlled, and how things like wealth advisory organizations are managed. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity for huge shifts with this wealth transfer. And, some people have said, well, that's not really a leadership topic. And I disagree.
definitely is
I
one.
think it is 100% a leadership topic. And it's one of the reasons why I'm bringing it in to the fold of this year's conference, because I think it could mark that kind of new era of leadership that we've been talking about for quite a few years. So yeah, some of the things that I'm looking forward to in the next few years.
Sounds really exciting, very ambitious, but I know that you are going to do it because what you've done so far, even just within 10 years is absolutely, mind-blowing, and I'm sure every woman that's part of W North and beyond, will speak to that, right? So thank you so much for being part of Beyond. I value your time so much, and I
Thank
look
you.
forward to, supporting you in any way I can to, build women up and to continue doing that and hopefully change those stats that we talked about at the beginning of the show. And like you mentioned now with the wealth transfer as well, I think it's so important that we continue to have a seat at the table, and we create our own rooms and tables as well, right?
100%.
If you want to be a decision maker, there's nothing that can't stop you. I really truly believe that. So thank you so much, Heather. I really value your time,
Thank you, Selena. It's a pleasure.
and hopefully see you in London.
Yeah.